modernizing data governance, data discovery, data quality, and beyond. And I'd say it's a perfect segue from Vincent's presentation to help set the stage for this discussion. And by the way, I'm going to be moderating this panel discussion. So I'm going to set the stage. So let's put data governance into a kind of a historical perspective. Before the digital age, data governance was, well, not exactly well defined. Right? Governance was imposed by those who basically held the data assets. Then came along the computer, the mainframe. Data governance was more defined then. Those who had the keys to the data center, so to speak, governed the data. We did enjoy the concept of single source of truth, and it was well protected and safeguarded. But as technology has evolved, the scope of data has expanded. The volume of data has gone off the charts. The challenge of governing this vast arena of information is making us feel at times like we're back in the Stone Age when it comes to applying data governance to this new digital world. Now, don't take my word for it. In a recent study by Gartner Group, they concluded that only 20% of organizations investing in information governance will actually succeed in scaling governance to this new digital environment. And again, I think the comments that Vincent made about making sure that our staffs are well educated and trained in these skills, so important to being successful at implementing data governance and data management. So what I'd like to talk to our panel about are the following concepts. What will it take to develop a sustainable data governance program in this drive towards digitalization? How do you build your program? How will you deal with data privacy and protection? How do you get and keep your stakeholders engaged? And what trends are you seeing to help you succeed in your data management journey? So let me welcome our panelists who will discuss these questions. From BigID, Peggy Tsai, Vice President from Data Solutions. From Ataccama, Afshin Lotfi, Executive Vice President. From Westpac Institutional Bank, Surabhi Jain, Chief Data Officer. And from TVS Motors Group, Mahesh Calavai, Chief Data and Analytics Officer. Panelists, welcome.
Hi, John. How are you?
Hello, great to be here.
Thanks, John.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start with the issues of privacy and data protection. So privacy regulations have impacted data governance practices for many global organizations. What has the privacy regulation, let's say GDPR, for example, had on any of the upcoming APAC protective laws in your organizations? And what are your data management teams doing differently to be proactive with these new privacy regulations? And Surabhi, let me kick it off with you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Really delighted to be on the panel. It's a very timely topic for me personally. I've just recently joined Westpac Institutional Banking to start up a new function. And data governance, data privacy, that's at the very heart of what we are looking to set up in this particular division. We talk about GDPR. Now, GDPR, there's a lot of confusion here, especially in Asia Pacific, that how does GDPR apply to the Asia Pacific market? Mm-hmm. But if we look at what GDPR might be one of the more stringent privacy requirements, but there are similar regulatory requirements that exist in Asia Pacific as well. So for example, in Australia, we have got the Australian Privacy Act, and there are a lot of similarities between the two. So it's looking at, what's applicable to each of our markets. So Westpac, in particular, institutional banking, we operate in a number of different countries. For EU, for UK, yes, more stringent laws apply, but equally 80% of those apply to Australia as well. So you asked the question, okay, how are we approaching that in Westpac. So to put it very simply, the approach that we have adopted is, one, we are looking at setting up a data privacy program to uplift our capabilities. So there would be a specific stream of work that we would be undertaking. But in addition to that, we are also looking at existing processes to see where we can uplift those capabilities. So some of the examples of that would be our vendor management. We have already got a robust process in place by which we are managing our vendors. So can we apply some of the data privacy questions to the vendor risk management process? So that's an approach that we are adopting. And looking at the broader program, the areas of focus would be for us, would be to understand what are the different processes, high-risk processes, via which we are collecting personal data and processing that, having clear roles and responsibilities in the teams as well. Who's accountable to do what? And most importantly, looking at our change management processes to see which capabilities can be built out during our new project initiation and execution phase. And of course, all of this ties in with governance on top, having a clear view on what are the data privacy controls that are in place, how are they operating, creating transparency around those. And for data protection, having clear data breach reporting processes, because by regulation, we are required to report these, any of the data breaches in a number of our jurisdictions within 72 hours, and for Australia within 30 days.
Yeah, in many cases, it's not, you can say in a way that it's almost impossible to prevent all breaches, but the firm that has built a good infrastructure responds quickly to them. And that's, I think, the point you're making there, the quick response. Mahesh, when we talk about data privacy, especially, we have a lot of people from finance, they think of the obvious things around that, but we're seeing the privacy issues hit manufacturing and other industries in the automotive space. What I found fascinating speaking to other automobile manufacturers is the fact that the driver's personal information is up in the cloud, what they do, where they drive, and all of that. So privacy has to be a major issue in what you're dealing with. How are you dealing with these challenges in your role at TVS?
Yeah, thanks, John, and great to be here, everyone. As Surabhi mentioned, right, so privacy laws are true universal. The consciousness of privacy and data protection is happening across the world, right? When GDPR really has set the stage. If you look at a market like India, for example, right? So India has its own privacy and data protection bill. It's not a law yet. There's also something called Data Empowerment and Protection Act, right? Architecture that is being done, and these are across industries, right? So wherever there is consumer data involved, there is certainly an implication of protecting privacy of consumer information. The way we are looking at this is integrating that with data management and governance, such that we are running parallel both governing data and looking at privacy. And our view is to have a privacy first, security first driven data processes and disciplines, such that we are on top of the emerging laws, regulations, but also public consciousness of what is a private information. And therefore, we are architecting processes, applications, machine learning models, inclusive of that. That's been our approach so far.
And Peggy, I mean, entity ID has to be front and center for any kind of privacy and protection. What are you seeing in the work that you're doing, and how are you responding to these increased focus on all of the issues related to protecting customers' data?
Thanks, John. So a lot of things that Surabhi and Mahesh has already said. I mean, privacy first, certainly. There are things about private data that needs to be tagged and secured, and these are fundamental to data governance practices. And we see a lot of that across many of our customers who take a data privacy first, but embedding them into the existing data governance activities. And certainly with GDPR in European Union, in the United States, it's the California Consumer Privacy. We see certainly a big spike in terms of a lot of more industries outside of financial services really now talking and coming to us about how they can protect their data. But the most successful ones are actually embedding privacy governance and really making it as a seamless process so that you're not really differentiating between private data and your sensitive data. It's really about all your data, making sure that it's all tagged, the data usage is properly understood so that all consumers, downstream consumers, your analytic users, your applications can use the data properly and ethically.
So we're not looking at privacy as a impediment, but just best practice on how to use the data effectively while still protecting it. Yeah. Let me shift now to just a broader question of data governance. And Afshin, if I can direct this question to you.
Sure.
I personally been doing this for a lot of years, and it still amazes me that I'll hear a question, why do I have to invest in data governance? You know, what's the return on my investment? And I think what everybody just spoke about in privacy should be the answer, but we still have that challenge. So I guess my question is, how do you convince your organizations that data governance is necessary and it's not an impediment to do work, but it's a necessary best practice to really mobilize your organization?
Yeah, that's a great question, John, and I think kind of goes back to your initial slide that you had, going back in time to the Stone Age. But really, when I think about building a successful and more important, sustainable data governance program, and I see it in that way because I think they're not necessarily always, mutually inclusive. Sometimes you can have a successful short-term data governance program, but not necessarily a sustainable one in the long run. And so when we're trying to really take a look at what it takes to have a sustainable data governance program, we'll have to be really cognizant of some of the challenges that we may face and a lot of organizations face today. And these the most common complaints and difficulties that we hear about from our from our clients and our friends is that they really are grouped into a few categories. You have your organizational resource-based issues. You have your issues around lack of business consensus or cooperation, and then of course you have a whole bunch of issues around technology itself. And this can be, if I can give some examples from, a lack of ownership, ownership not being properly defined and therefore not having a clear direction or clear vision on your data governance program, or difficulties in terms of understanding, what is it actually that we're trying to govern here? What are the terms that we're trying to understand, and how can we, be able to ensure that we have a clear consensus across the organization on what is that we want to do. And then, not having enough metadata. I think Peggy talked about, the importance of, tagging data and the importance of being able to understand the usage of those privacy attributes. And not having enough detailed metadata available that is accessible, that is classified, and that is commonly understood across the enterprise is some of the things that you will have to really overcome if you want to have a successful data governance program. Mm-hmm. And then even if you do have the metadata available, just the sheer amount of data that we're dealing with, and that's something you touched upon, I think, John, earlier, and also in the first panel, David touched upon as well. As we're collecting vast amount of data, whether it's for regulatory compliance reasons or for privacy reason or whatever it may be, we just don't have, organizations just don't have enough resources available to manage such large amount of data, and more important, the metadata that comes associated with that data set. And I think the biggest thing, if you take a look at some of these issues that I mentioned, I think the biggest one that really prevented previous data governance initiative to be successful is the fact that no one really had the energy to maintain it and keep the metadata up to date. So kicking off the initiative is tough, but maintaining it may be even tougher. So I think the real question is, how can we really keep stakeholders engaged and maintain a buy-in over time? You know, and not just the initial excitement of this new program and this new initiative. It's like, how can we make sure that this is something that lasts for a long time? And generally speaking, I think the answer is automation. In my opinion, automation is key, is the one thing that will really help you drive a long-term program. And I was actually glad to hear that even Vincent in the previous session talked about the importance of, you know, AI and machine learning. And I think that also applies in a successful data governance program. So if you want to be successful, you can't just rely on crowdsourcing. I think you really have to take a look at some, you know, more modern initiatives that can help you alleviate the issues around resourcing and just the sheer volume of metadata.
Afshin, you mentioned getting the buy-in and driving data governance through that type of activity. Surabhi, could you give an example of how you've achieved buy-in from your management and from your stakeholders? I know you're still relatively new in your new role, but I figured that'd be a good question to ask you. So,
I think you know, the question around buy-in, it surprises me these days, because when I started in the Chief Data Office function going back 7 years ago, these were the conversations we were happening then. And I do feel that, you know, the world has moved on from buying, perhaps for financial institutions, to, you know, to Ashwin's point, how do we do this better, faster? So that's what I'm observing in the financial industry. Also, the very fact that if you look at the papers for the last couple of weeks, some very large firms have been in news for being fined for lack of data management. So the question to ask our organizations is, are we okay with that?
yeah. Mahesh, I think you're the first Chief Data Officer at TDS.
That's right.
And good to see that you're still there, as they say, always the first ones, the tough ones, right? So you know, what was some of your tricks or secrets to bringing not only the stakeholders but management and operations, you know, to embrace this data management, data governance objective?
Sure, John. Let me actually piggyback on what Surabhi mentioned. So these days, the advantage of starting now in convince organizations is the consciousness is largely there, right? It's about helping connect the dots, and I can share some of the tricks, as you call it, right? That we've done. From the get-go, we've talked about data and analytics together, right? So today, everybody talks about the power of analytics to move businesses forward, the power of AI and ML. And what we started doing is connecting the importance of data from the get-go, right? So if, for example, in all our companies, we have a blueprint, right? So this is our blueprint of how we want to advance leveraging analytics. And where we, of course, talk about all the fun and jazz words on how we can use machine learning here, we can use machine learning there to improve either top line or bottom line. But in all those presentations, we consciously include talking about improving data, right? So that way, in every conversation, the importance of data is as felt as the power of analytics. So that's one key thing that we have done. And in that, data management and governance is the first on the list, right? So we talked about, so therefore the importance of that is centrally felt. That's one trick that we've used. Second is when it comes to the business case, and we talk about leveraging analytics to move business forward, we talk about both offense and defense, right? Clearly the defense portion is more understood when it comes to regulatory risk management, importance of traceability of particularly black box models in machine learning, so that is felt. We also talk about offense, right? How importance of good quality labeled data that is powered through data management and governance enables higher power in your applications, be it in predicting responders or understanding credit risk or looking at fraud and the like, right? So that's another conscious choice that we've made.
So
The third aspect that has also gone a long way, the third aspect that's gone a long way, John, if you can finish it, right, is including in the CEO and CXO performance reviews. Whenever we talk about, for example, the power of an analytic solution, talk about the progress we've made in data governance. So whatever the business case that was sold up front is consciously reinforced. And this is not just through the data and analytics pillar, but through technology, but through operations, through risk management, so that the ownership is also built as an alliance set across the enterprise. So these are some things that we've worked on.
So what I heard a lot of what you said, Mahesh, is data governance as an enabler, not just you must, things you can't do, it's the things that you're enabling to do. Right? Which I think is one, I think, the key perspectives of data governance. We're just about to wrap up. Let me do a last quick one answer, like one sentence answer. If you were sitting with a new data governance professional, Peggy, what was the first thing you would tell them?
I would actually, I gave this advice 12 hours ago, which is think about automating a lot of your manual data governance processes. Look at new discovery tools that are available out there today that were not available a few years ago to reduce the time to do a lot of data governance and realize the value of data governance to your organization.
Surabhi, what would your one-line advice be?
Focus on incremental delivery that's recognized as business value add.
I like that. Afshin.
Well, I just want to echo part of what Peggy said as well. I think automation, AI, and machine learning will be key in making sure that you streamline your data governance program so that you have both speed and agility available to you.
And Mahesh, take us on home.
So I'd say integrate, right? So don't think of data governance as a silo, but rather as a glue that connects a lot of functions together. Take organizations along, and therefore your success as a data governance professional is guaranteed, as well as the success of the initiative for the organization. That would be
exactly. Panelists, thanks so much. I know this is rapid fire, but I really appreciate your insights. I hope you can stick around for the rest of the event. And of course, lots of questions are coming in, and we'll share those questions with you.
Thank you.
So this brings us.
Thanks, John.